If you would like to keep the adventure going after the show, be sure to like our Facebook friends page, Grand Circle Tour Magical Ticket Holders. While on Facebook, like our group page, Grand Circle Tour. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Grand Circle Tour Podcast, as well as Instagram, GCT Podcast, and our YouTube channel, Grand Circle Tour. If you would like to send us a message, you can email us at gctpodcast@gmail.com. T-shirts and other fun merchandise can be found at tpublic.com. Simply search Grand Circle Tour Podcast. If you enjoyed your adventure, leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Only one rule, make it good. Thank you for riding with us, and welcome home.
I am Sam the American Eagle, and I am proud to introduce the Grand Circle Tour Podcast, a celebration of Disney parks, but mostly the American ones. I really like these guys.
Bumpy flight, and who knows where we'll land? The freezing cold of Hoth, the sandstorms of Tatooine.
Or get blasted to bits by the Empire.
What? Are you scared?
No. Really? Because you look scared.
With more than 50 different adventures, you never know where you'll go. Star Tours new in 3D, part of the Soundsational Summer at the Disneyland Resort.
Ooh, somebody's got eyes for you.
Hey gang, welcome to another exciting adventure of the Grand Circle Tour Podcast. I'll be your captain today, Captain Stan Solo, and I'm here with two of our fabulous tour guides. Let's start off with ladies first. We have Caroline. Caroline, how are you doing today?
Hey, Stan. I'm excited to be here tonight. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And you should be excited because our topic today is amazing. When we first started this podcast, this is one of the ones I wanted to do for sure, and I'm so glad we were able to get it together. Also with us today, we have our Jungle Skipper. Jungle Skipper Jay, how are you today?
Aloha, I'm great, Stan. How are you?
I'm just glad you're able to park the boat and make it to my ship without too much trouble. So this week we have I am so excited for this, our special guest today. People often will ask me, well, actually they don't often ask me, but when people ask me, they say, who is the nicest people you know or you have ever met? And there are three people on that list. Number one is my dad. My dad was one of the nicest people I've ever met, and the entire town really, really got along with him. I grew up in a small town. They would do anything for him. He would do anything for anybody else. Another one was a guy I used to work with quite a few years ago. His name was Mark, and he no longer works with me, but he moved on, got his own business, and is doing quite well. But he was one of these another really nice guys. And then the third, anytime someone asks me who's the nicest guy you ever met, is our guest tonight, Ron Cohee from the Disney Design Group. I met him on the Alaskan Wonder during a WDW radio cruise. And for those of you who don't know what the Disney Design Group is or does, Ron's here to tell us all about it. Ron, welcome aboard. And how are you today?
Oh, great. Thanks so much for having me.
We are so excited and happy to have you here. Can you tell us, just before we kind of get into your history a little bit, what is the Disney Design Group, and for people that don't know?
Well, let's see. Basically, we design the park exclusive merchandise for most of the Disney theme parks, the domestic parks, and also we share a lot of work with our partners overseas, the other parks as well. And we're currently called, actually, there's been some changes, so we're currently called the Disney Creative Group. But we work hand in hand with Disney Consumer Products. We're all part of the same team. And also with product design and development, which is the more direct art to product. We work hand in hand with them to get the art looking fantastic on all the merchandise.
Excellent. Now, do you just do the theme parks or also the cruise line ships at all as well?
There's been things in the past that I've worked on when I was self-employed that also, for the cruise lines I've done stuff. Oh, you mean merchandise-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. there's been a lot of merchandise that we do constantly for not only the parks, but also the resorts and as well as the cruise lines. That's right.
I got to tell you, I'm loving the stuff that's coming out for the resorts now. That's resort specific.
Oh yeah.
So you go into Pop Century, you go into Grand Floridian, and you're seeing keychains that are for Grand Floridian and for Pop Century, not just Disney parks.
Yeah.
And I'm loving seeing that.
Oh, great. I'm excited about that too. Any kind of exclusivity is fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. Caroline, do you have a question for Ron?
Yes, I do. So I want to know, before you got here, when did you knew that you had a love for art, and how did that manifest itself?
Oh gosh, I was probably, I've been told that I was about 2 years old and I was drawing. You know, we're in a park, and I was born in Los Angeles, so I grew up in Southern California. But yeah, we went to a family park one time, just a, you know, community park. And there was somebody sitting there on a bench. I just walked up and took a pen and started drawing on the back of their hand or something. So that was what I was told was like an earliest time of just drawing for somebody. But yeah, I've loved, obviously, drawing and Disney go right together for me, you know. So ever since I've been aware of Disney, I've always been drawing as well. And so yeah, it's as far as back as I can remember.
So did you always know that, did you think, oh, I'm just a good artist, I'm going to do this as my hobby? Or did you always think, I want this to be the way I make my living?
That's a great question, because it wasn't necessarily the same thing. You know, it was obviously drawing all the time was sort of it was like a hobby, obviously, yeah. It was how I enjoyed the world, how I interpreted life. You know, I just drew stuff like anybody would. But the more serious you get into it, the more practice you get in it, and the more you start applying it to different things. I didn't think of it as a career choice, because I didn't know enough about that until probably the mid 80s. And I started doing flip books and stuff like that and animating. And of course, seeing Disney. But, you know, the mid 80s was kind of a different time. There weren't as many, the films weren't as coming out as often as they are now. And you'd see things on TV, of course. But I think it was about 86, and then definitely in 1988, because Roger Rabbit came out, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and the following year, that year, Oliver and Company, and then the next year was The Little Mermaid. And by that point, I was just, that's it. This is what I want to do. When I found out that's a career you could have, bringing these characters to life and everything, that's all I wanted to do. So that's when it merged.
All right. So what step did you take to make that happen?
Well, I found out about my grandmother somehow got me onto the Disney lot in Burbank just to visit it while I was still in high school. And, you know, obviously went in the store and bought, you know, a shirt and stuff, but saw the animation building. And by then I was just such a, I don't want to use the word geek, that's a strong word, but I was just such an aficionado of it. And I bought Frank and Ollie's book, The Illusion of Life, which is, if you don't know, it's kind of like the Bible of Disney animation and how it works and as a career. And an art form. And so then I found out about California Institute of the Arts, which is also called CalArts, and it's in Valencia, California. And well, hence the name CalArts. But anyway, so I found out about that and applied there after a couple of years of junior college, and didn't get in the first year, but then the second time I got accepted. And it was around that same time I also found out about its history and that Walt Disney had actually founded it and everything. And in fact, the money from Mary Poppins, the premiere, helped to fund building of the school and everything. So it's got a rich history.
Wow.
I know Jason has a lot of questions about CalArts, but before we get to CalArts, one thing that I was wondering about was, were your parents behind you in support of when you said, I want to make a living being an artist, as opposed to, you know, something we're guaranteed to make a living?
Right. No, that's a good point. It's a very practical point, because I heard both sides of it. So I was very encouraged in everything. And, you know, even things like, I don't know if you heard of, you know, way before the time I was talking about a minute ago, but there were things like the Art Instruction School, which was a correspondence course. And obviously this is before the internet and all that kind of stuff. But, this is one of those things that was started in, I believe, the 30s or 40s. And Charles Schultz was a member of it and all this stuff. One of those things where you see the little matchbook and it has a little character on it, says, can you draw me? And you send it in. And it's actually a big program that you go through the mail and you learn basic art techniques and, but yeah, they were very supportive, and that's an example of how they helped me out with that. But I also heard the other side of it, which was basically, well, you should have something to back up, something in case this doesn't work out. And I totally understand that, especially now as a parent, I'm starting to think the same way. But at the same time, there's always that thing that, of course, Disney is always supporting, which is follow your dreams, follow your heart, and whatever you're passionate about, you got to have your mind and heart both working together. So I think they're both good advice.
Yeah.
The second part of that quote people often leave out, and follow your dream as long as you have the courage to. Anything can come true as long as you have the courage to pursue it.
Yes.
And the courage part is the hard part.
Yeah. It's all too easy to get discouraged. Yeah.
Jason, you had a question?
I'd love to know about the classes at CalArts. What do they teach you there?
Oh, that was great. I had some of my favorite times there. I was there for 2 years. I didn't finish the whole 4 years. Disney hired me after the second year. So I was very fortunate with that because it was a dream come true. But the classes were fantastic. It was great the whole point that Walt had, if you read about it, is that he, in the 60s, one of his dreams was that he wanted to, along with Epcot, the city of the future, he wanted to make an art school that could train people in all the different art forms that were around in the entertainment field and elsewhere. So there was dance, there was acting, there were, it's not just, you think of it in terms of animation a lot, but that was just one of many programs. So as an example, Glenn Keane went there in the 70s, and he went not to become an animator, he wanted to be a painter. And he's got a great story about that. There was a mix-up or something happened, and the animation program was brand new. So that was put in the 70s. And they had the classic animators, some of the 9 old men. So animation was not part of the original schedule it was not part of the offerings in the very beginning, the early days of the school. But by the 70s, they started offering character animation as one of the programs there. And Glenn Keane had applied for painting. Somehow his portfolio got mixed up, and he has a great story about that. And it ended up in animation, and he fell in love with it. And he's probably one of the greatest animators ever at the company. So the classes there that I took in character animation were a blast. I mean, imagine being a school where some of your classes you're going to watch cartoons today. But it wasn't just that. And I'm sorry if I'm going on and on about this.
No, it was interesting.
We studied classic filmmaking, because basically they're really teaching everybody not only how to animate, but how to direct, and the importance of story, storyboarding, putting together a story reel, all this stuff. And they had, theater in there. And you'd go in the theater every week and watch a different classic film like Gaslight, Citizen Kane, of course, textbook films like that, but also ones you've never really heard of, but were interesting nonetheless. So that's why I'm still hooked now to like Turner Classic Movies and stuff like that, because I love the art of filmmaking. And when you watch a lot of films today, especially with Disney and Pixar, of course, and other studios that really do it well, you can feel the classic films come through, because animators often study more classic films than they do current films. So they're so rich in acting and story. And anyway, I hope that answers some of that.
You have listed movies that you have film credits in. Let's start off with Fantasia 2000, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, Tarzan, Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear, Princess and the Frog. And this is just a few of them that I took from there. Now, when you say you have film credits in them, were you an animator? Were you a storyboard artist? What was the different things for different movies?
I kind of did all three. The 10 years that I worked at Disney, from 94 through 2004, I was an assistant animator. And there are various levels in that, but that's basically a cleanup artist. So what the cleanup artist did was, the animator, the character animator would animate the scene as rough sketches in varying degrees. Some animators like James Baxter did Quasimodo, phenomenal. And his stuff was very tight. It was almost clean already. All you had to do was put a final line over it on a separate paper.
And sign your initials on and get a paycheck.
Yeah. Well, and then sometimes you'd get a scene where it was really rough, and like sometimes the Beast. I worked on the special edition of Beauty and the Beast, and did a whole new sequence on there. And it's a lot of work to put them on model, to make sure you're keeping the integrity of the animator's intentions and acting and personality. But you also have to make sure it looks like that character's been drawn by the same person throughout the whole film, and every button's in place, etc. And then after the studio closed, 2004, out here in Florida, because I had moved here in 97 to work in Milan, and I stayed ever since. A small studio started up with some of the animators from there, and they gave me a shot animating, which was my ultimate dream, was to actually animate. And the chance had just never come during those 10 years, because I honestly thought there'd be plenty of time. But it worked out that I got a chance to animate on Curious George, which was Universal, obviously. It wasn't Disney, but a lot of Disney people were on it. So I'm very proud of that film. It's a lot of fun. Because then I get somebody else cleaned up my drawings. It was nice.
So the initial animators, they're doing in pencil?
I'm sorry?
The initial animators, are they in pencil that they're drawing?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And then when you clean it up, you're doing it on a cell?
No, actually, the way it would work, and it's still done this way in certain forms, like for TV animation and some films that are done overseas that are really beautiful. Obviously, we're talking about hand-drawn animation here as opposed to CG. What's done is you literally just take a piece of paper with the peg holes on the bottom that you see, and rough animation is done, and it could be any color. Usually they would do it in red or blue, or sometimes in sort of a Tuscan red or a brown. And then I would take that whole scene, you'd get it given to you in a package, and you take it out and you pick out the main key drawings that are the most important ones before you break it down to other artists. It's kind of like an assembly line. You do the main drawings, you put a clean piece of paper over that, and you start it all over again fresh, but you constantly flip to look at the original drawing to make sure you're getting it just right. And but doing it in clean graphite, like a fine, clean, because it has to look good even on an IMAX screen. That was the process, basically.
Okay. And then from that, it would get transferred to a cell.
Yeah, all the way up through Little Mermaid, I believe, in '89. That was the last film to use cells that Disney did.
Oh, okay.
And those were clean sheets of acetate that the ink and paint artists back then would put right over the cleanup drawing, and then they would do the drawing all over again with an ink brush, and then turn that over when that was dry, and then that brush would be done in different colors. And now this was up through Sleeping Beauty in '59. So I'm sorry if I'm going on about this, but it's always fascinating me, the history of it.
It is, yeah.
Over when that dries, and then you paint the character in on the back.
Yeah.
And, after Sleeping Beauty, it was just, frankly, very, very expensive, especially with her hair and everything like that. So what they did is they moved to Xerox. They discovered a way of, here, we could take the drawings and then just Xerox them right onto cells, so they don't have to be inked. That's why from 101 Dalmatians on, you had the drawings, if you look at the characters, they're a little rougher, and they're not in a color. They're usually a sepia color line on them, consistent color. Whereas you look at Sleeping Beauty and you have the hair is a certain color line and the skin. Now, then it took another giant leap forward, actually thanks to Pixar. Pixar was, before they started making films, they were helping other people out with software and computers, obviously. But at this point, what they did was they helped Disney out by giving them this CAPS software, this hardware and software, basically like an early Photoshop, but made for animation. So you could do the painting, inking and painting in the computer. It would scan in the cleanup artist drawings, like my drawings, and then you'd go in there and make sure the line, then you could now they finally got the chance to have the lines in different colors, just like back in Sleeping Beauty and everything. So you have that, but it's done using the computer and then filling in painting. And I got a chance to do that on Princess and the Frog, actually. And it was so much harder than I thought it would be. It was really, I gained a lot of respect for ink and paint artists. Anyway, sorry for the long story.
Yeah, but Princess and the Frog, yeah, it really paid off on that one because that's such a beautiful looking movie. And when you go back to looking at the 101 Dalmatians, that whole era, you could see when you watch it especially on a high definition TV, you can really see the roughness, and you can see sketch lines often in frames pop up and whatnot too.
Oh yeah, we did that. Oh, sorry, real quick about that. We emulated that with I don't know if you saw John Henry, the short.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Then we did that in Florida here, and I loved that project. I wish it could have been a whole feature, but the drawings actually took a lot less time and cleanup because we went literally like the old days. You took the animator's drawings, made copies of them first just in case, and then you literally would draw right on that, and it was kind of intimidating.
Oh wow!
You'd erase them down just a little bit. Sometimes you do a whole new one, but you'd still try to keep that sort of sketchy look to it, so that when you watch it, you still see composition lines and everything on features, and it just had so much life. We loved every bit of it. So
yeah, Jason,
I just have to ask: do you have a favorite memory from your time at animation that you want to share?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. Well, Fantasia was fantastic. That was the one I got my start on. And it lasted years, but to work on the sequel to Fantasia, which is one of my favorites, was such an honor. And that was when I got hired. I was asked, myself and another artist were asked if we'd like to work on that. So absolutely, yeah. But during that time, which lasted 3 years for us, from the first thing I worked on was, that part with the whales, the Pines of Rome sequence.
One of my favorite ones.
Oh, excellent. So I did the eyes on those whales. The eyes.
Are you kidding me?
Oh.
Yeah, that's
the highlight of that segment.
Oh,
whenever I see that, it's always the eyes on the whales sell that.
Oh, film. Wow. Well, yeah, there's a mother, a father, and a baby whale, and the seagulls were hand done, and a lot of the water effects were hand done. But that was when I was brand new, right there in Glendale. And obviously, I was very excited to be there. But we also, at the same time, between segments on Fantasia, like there was that one, then there was the Steadfast Tin Soldier, and there was Pomp and Circumstance with Donald Duck.
Yep.
And in between and running throughout that, we worked on the other big features that were happening, like Pocahontas, which was the first one that I saw my credit in, and then Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules. And after that, then I transferred to Florida. But yeah, Fantasia was fantastic because it was just, everything was new, and it was just such a blast.
Yeah, exactly. That is so exciting. So now, after you were done, they eventually closed the Florida animation studios, and I know you did a bit of work with another company that was basically all Disney people. How did that work? They were working for Disney at the time, or was they doing Disney films?
Various studios, actually, but they're now called Premise Entertainment, and they're still doing amazing stuff. But Disney was definitely, or has been, a big client, if you want to put it that way. So at that time, what happened was, I mentioned Curious George, but obviously that wasn't Disney. But I also got a chance to storyboard, which I had never done before professionally, and that was also something that was a lot of fun. But I worked on 3 direct-to-video sequels for Disney through them. So Cinderella 3 was one of them. Pooh's Heffalump Halloween was a blast. In fact, I think it wasn't going to happen until myself and John Hurst, an animator that was working there, also storyboarding. He has since gone on to work with Blue Sky. So they work on, Ice Age and all those great films that they're doing there. He's an amazing talent. So he helped me out a lot because I was fresh to this. And we got that film. We storyboarded, I believe, like 75% of that film, the Heffalump Halloween. So that was a lot of fun. And also the Tinkerbell movie. We helped out on that, and one of its early iterations changed a lot before it got done. Yeah, that was a lot of Disney projects that went through there.
Caroline, did you have a question?
I do. I want to know that what it has been like working for Disney. Has it been what you hoped it would be, or all that you dreamed it would be?
Absolutely. I love it. I still love it just as much as when I first started. It's all about the people that you work with. Just like any career, you work with great people on top of the fact that you love the business and the work. But if you have great people to work with, it makes it all the better. And all along, I've worked in different departments of the company, different studios within the company, and different coasts and everything. And there's so many fantastic people working here. And just here in Florida, I mean, there's people I work with in this relatively small studio, this design group. They're amazing, and they do so many different things, and things that I didn't really have much exposure to before necessarily, like graphic design. I've grown so much respect and admiration for them because it's a field that I was never trained in, and to watch them and learn from them is spectacular. It's just awesome. So yeah, the people are what do it for me.
Well, it's very inspirational to get to hear your journey and your story and how you've gotten to take what you love and make it your life's work. So it's a very inspirational story, and I so appreciate you sharing it with us.
Well, thank you. It's great to meet you guys.
We're not done.
Oh, great. Okay.
Jason.
So when did you move into merchandising?
Oh, wow. Yeah, merchandising. That was amazing how that worked out. Well, 2004 was kind of a rough year, obviously. So the studio closed down, but you can kind of see the writing on the wall at the time and everything like that. So you're trying to prepare your portfolio for different things. It was all sort of a blessing in disguise. And I'm just speaking for myself, not for everyone else. I think at one point there were about 400 artists there, 400 people working there. So that was a fantastic place to work. And everybody kind of had different strengths and skills that they focused on, especially after that. You kind of found, well, what else can I do? Or what have I always wanted to do? And what can I prepare myself for next? And I didn't know about what was then called the Disney Design Group, or DDG. They were sharing the building with us, but we were kind of separated. So it was really kind of weird. We didn't know about this team that was sharing part of the building with us, and what they did for the theme parks. And it wasn't until about 3 years later, and I've been working, as we said, with Project Firefly, or Premise Entertainment now. And it just happened to be at the end of that time that I met someone who was working at DDG and showed him my stuff. And one thing led to another. And after some interviews, I got hired. And that's basically, that was my introduction. And it was how do you put it? I had to learn a lot. It was amazing. I thought, oh, I can draw Disney characters. I can do this stuff. But there was so much I did not know about, working with certain computer programs and basic like product development and a lot of the business side of things too. I had to learn, and it's fantastic. It's been great, and it's changed a lot over the years. One of the biggest things for me has been Pixar, because I've always loved Pixar, and even back in animation, I was on the side. I was doing a lot of stuff for Disney Publishing, mostly Pixar books, and learning how to draw those characters, how to translate CG characters into 2D hand-drawn characters that look good in the books. And that's been a big focus for me at merchandise, is helping with that. And then also getting a chance to go over and visit them at the studio in Emeryville in California. So that's been a highlight for me there.
So now you're talking about merchandising. What are some of the merchandise? Now I know that you've done pins, and you've done Vinylmations.
Yeah.
What type of things now? If I'm walking into the Disney store, what would I see that you have worked on?
Well, actually, not the Disney store. That's a separate group. I mean, sometimes we do share things with them, but not often. I think they have.
Well, I mean, in the world of Disney stores.
Oh, yes.
Disney
Sorry.
I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, in the theme parks.
Yeah.
There's been so many different things, and again, a lot of it is a group effort, like a team effort with everybody. So we share work on a lot of projects together. But yeah, other than, you know, the first couple of years I was doing a lot of pins, and then of course Vinylmation. I think I did 150 of those, somewhere around there, and those were a lot of fun. And again, a big learning curve, so it was a lot of fun with that. I also worked on big figs, like those large figurines. Those really large. I have one behind me, like the Tinkerbell one where she's on the bottle. And there was one I did that I'm really proud of. I wish I had picked it up, but it was because we don't get samples of them or anything like that. But it's from Fantasia. Of course, Fantasia is really close to me. So one from Fantasia, he's got his arms crossed, and he's got this big clear acrylic piece behind him that sort of looks like ice, and it all lights up, and all the different characters from the film are carved into it. That was a lot of fun. And basically, now what I'm doing more specifically is what we call art packs or style guides, where you generate a whole lot of art for a certain subject or an event or a holiday or things like that. So let's just say food and wine or flower and garden or Halloween, Christmas, you know. And that art will be taken and applied to different products, various things, whether it be shirts or keychains, everything, you name it. And that's fascinating because you get to create all this art and focus more on what you are doing. In my case, I'm a character artist. I'm a senior character artist there. And I get to really focus my attention on that, which is fantastic. And then there are these amazing, talented artists and designers who then take that and incorporate it, make patterns out of it, make different designs, and you'll see it on shirts and all kinds of things.
Pepper shakers and wine glasses.
Yeah.
Toothpick holders.
Toothpick holders, there you go.
Yeah. You mean shot glasses?
Well,
I call them toothpick holders.
I know, I'm kidding. I know what I know.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, T-shirts, I'm guessing?
Oh, yes. Yeah, lots of shirts. That part of the division is called the soft lines division. And I was on that team. And again, it's changed a lot. So that the hierarchy, the division of work has kind of changed over the years. But there's hard lines, which are, like you said, keychains, things like that, and big figurines and everything. Soft lines hard lines is like if you throw it, it's going to hurt. Soft lines are the soft things, like anything from shirts to purses. And I learned so much in that. I had no idea, like all the stuff about Dooney and Burke and Vera Bradley and
what did you learn about those things?
Oh, well, it's just fascinating things. I mean, you know, I wouldn't have known specific things. We had meetings with them and everything. And that was a blast. Like when you get to meet the actual people who are going to be applying art to their products and then partnering with Disney to sell them. And every place, what got me the most about all the different people that you meet is that obviously they love their product a lot. Like that's their Disney, you know, if you want to put it that way. That's their love, and it's like their child, their baby, and they want that to be given the proper respect and care and attention. And we work together to make sure that both sides are getting the best thing out of this. You know, Disney is being represented the best on the product, and the product itself is being represented the best. So one of those bags, for instance, or purses or shirts, you know, also, you know, Tommy Bahama, I worked on one of those, a couple of those shirts with Mickey on them. And there's all these things I did not know about. Again, I wasn't trained as a graphic designer, I was an animator, but I gained a lot of respect for people working on all this and how that works with patterns. And in the very beginning, like I didn't know, you know, what ombre meant. You know, I understand the gradation and all this stuff, but I thought it was like, are you doing like John Wayne impression? You know, what's that all? Ombre. So
yeah. So now is it? I'm assuming that you don't have free reign on whatever you want to do. If you want to do a Mickey Mouse pin, you don't just go ahead and design a Mickey Mouse pin and hand it in. it has to get okayed? It has to, or do
Oh,
they
sure.
come to you and say, we want him in this stance?
Yeah, there's a variety of things. Of sometimes you get something that's very specific to do, yeah, and it has to be a certain thing. And then sometimes it's more artist choice, where, and that happens often with pins and things like that, where it's saying, hey, look, this just has to be something regarding this, and we want this character in it. And then you come up with, when I was on the pins team a while back, like, gosh, I think that was like 10 years ago, but that was a blast. I'm a big fan of Norman Rockwell. So I would get inspired by his work, because even that would apply, in my opinion, to pins, Disney pins, because they're little vignettes, they're little scenes, and they're contained masterfully, just like Rockwell is contained in those little, like a circle or a shape, and you get all these elements working in this little illustration, and it has to work from, well, not for a pin necessarily, but any design on a shirt or anything has to work. What's that rule? I don't know if it's like, the 10-second, 10-foot rule. You walk into a store, you see something from 10 feet away, it should read. You should immediately understand what it is, what the drawing is. It shouldn't be confusing. And you should get it within 10 seconds of looking at it or less, And so when you look at a pin and you pick it up and you hold it up like that, you should immediately see what it is and understand it, and it should all make sense. And so everyone's actually a master at that at our place. They really have a lot of experience doing that, new and old. There are a lot of new artists that have just come in there, and I'm amazed at how much they already grasp, when they get started.
So when you're designing a pin, I'm guessing you're doing the drawing, and then you hand it off to someone else, and then it will eventually be made into a pin. I'm guessing it goes to China or somewhere, and they make a pin out of it. From the time that you finish the drawing and hand it off until the time it gets into the store, is it like a week? Is it 2 months? Is it a year?
Yeah, well, again, I'm not on that team anymore, but I know the artists that are still doing those, and again, they're phenomenal, and they do the work, and from what I recall, I think it can be, 6 months. It can be maybe less depending on the rush, Vinylmation, I remember it was almost a year sometimes before you'd actually see it on the shelf. But again, it's just, there's so much work that's done that's another thing I gained a whole lot of respect for, is the actual process of putting these things on the products and creating them at the various factories when they're done. And a lot of it is by hand, even things that you would think are so small and you'd think there'd be something for it. I saw footage from there. I've never been myself, but a lot of the artists I work with have toured, a lot of these factories where we are partners that create all this stuff with us. And they take our designs and they apply it and they send a sample back to make sure it looks right. And then when we approve it, then it's mass, done in quantity. But even those Vinylmation or those or the pins, the paint is applied by hand and put in there, and then there's different depending on what it is. It's just surprising the amount of hard work that goes into each one of those.
Wow. Okay, so you're currently working on, like you said, you're working on, like, say, food and wine type of stuff. How far advanced are you designing food and wine stuff, or for an event like the stuff that we're seeing now? Was that a year ago that you guys were working on that, or is that?
Yeah, we're usually, and again, I can't talk very specifically about all the current.
Yeah,
things.
But we'll go like the stuff that we're seeing now. Was that designed last month, or was that designed 2 years ago?
It's usually at least a year ahead. So there'll be stuff that, like right now, you see the number 2020 on a lot of things already. It's amazing, and you start thinking that way too, because then all of a sudden you realize, well, gosh, we haven't even gotten to 2019 yet, because the art is so far ahead. And because it takes so much to get not only the art done, but then it has to be assembled and applied to products and then sent and actually manufactured. And by the time that's all done, it's definitely a race to get things done on time, so that not only can it be shipped out here, first out to California and then shipped from there overland to Florida. And from there, oh gosh, I was in the warehouse where it's all taken in, spread out sent to the various store locations on property, and it's amazing. There's so many things that I was taking for granted that I had no idea about what happens in between, like when you work on something and then all of a sudden it's just there it is on the shelf.
No
so
kidding.
much that goes on there and so much time spent and hard work. It's
I
phenomenal.
remember working on this 2 years ago. Oh, that's so cool. When I met you on the WDW radio cruise, you told us a story about the Disney Wonder has at the back of the boat Donald Duck, and one of his nephews is a three-dimensional statue or figurine, a massive figurine of Donald Duck, and one of his nephews is cutting the rope. I'm sure nearly all of our passengers are familiar with that story, and you were assigned a job of doing a bus wrap that was similar to that. Can you tell us a bit about that story?
Oh yeah, this was actually at a point where I was working from home at that point. There was a layoff one year, and so for 2 years, it was another one of those things that it's just business, something that came up, and it was like, okay, well, it's a blessing in disguise because I was introduced to Imagineering, to getting to work with them, and also Princess and the Frog. That's right when that happened. So it was like, one day it was like, oh man, and then all of a sudden, oh great, cool, I get to work on this. So that was excellent. But then Imagineering, there were a lot of jobs with them. And I've kind of kept up that relationship, thankfully, with them. They're great. But that particular one, there was a thing for a bus wrap, and you see it where Donald, it's the same art basically, but I kind of embellished it and changed it and made it all fresh for this bus. Instead of the nephews cutting the rope that Donald's hanging on off the side of the ship, obviously, it was brought up to me like, okay, can you do something else? Because if we're cutting the rope, he's not going to just fall into water here. He's going to be hitting the pavement,
on the I-4.
Yeah, we don't want that. We don't want that implication, So it was more humorous to say, okay, well, the nephews and Donald are painting the side of the bus. So maybe he's just, let's see, what was he doing? Oh yeah, it's been a long time. Instead of cutting the rope, they're just splashing the paint at Donald and getting him wet and making him mad and stuff like that. So that was just a more humorous, less dangerous solution to that.
And I remember you telling us this story, and every single time I see one of those buses, I always think of you. And it is such a cute story because I wouldn't have thought of that. I would have thought, yeah, okay, he cuts the rope. That's how he does it on the ship. It's a cruise line bus. But it makes perfect sense that you wouldn't want Donald, tumbling and getting run over.
Oh, yeah.
Going down the highway.
That's the kind of thing that's surprising. Maybe not too surprising, but even in merchandise, there's so much of that thinking that has to happen to the point where you wouldn't think that would, be a problem. Stuff like that, where it's something like, we shouldn't have that because someone's going to imply something from this. But, certain things like safety, showing the characters, if you're showing them in a ride, you can't have them with their arms up in the air because someone, God forbid, might say, hey, well, I saw Mickey doing that. It must be okay to do. And then you don't want anything bad happening or anything like that. So you're just very careful about things, even sometimes when it seems kind of silly, like, well, it's a cartoon. We can do something. Well, you just got to be careful because the ultimate thing is responsibility. We have to be responsible for what we're showing our guests and make sure they have a good time and a safe time. What is it? Safety begins with me. That's the thing. So, yeah. Yeah. The gallery, that's another thing. The galleries, I know some really phenomenal artists that do stuff for the galleries all the time. And they've been trying to get me to do stuff for it at some point, but I want to get better at painting and everything first. I can cheat on the computer a little bit, but like, I don't know if you see Brian Blackmore's work or Alex Mayer's work or Darren Wilson's work. But these guys do some amazing, amazing stuff that's in the galleries often. I did one thing that ended up being sold, and it was just sort of an employee purchase sort of deal. But it was, I don't know if you saw it, but it was Toy Story in the Parks. So it was the Toy Story characters in Pirates of the Caribbean. So it was just Toys of the Caribbean, and they're reenacting the scene in the jail. But it's all done with, pencils instead of bars and toy blocks and stuff like that. And of course, Slinky is the dog, and he's holding these little toy keys and things
Oh,
like
that's
that.
awesome.
I love that. And again, I love Pixar. So it was a blast doing that for that item, which wasn't a merchandise item. It was something sold sort of through the gallery. Or actually, it was through the Company D stores. I don't know if you know about that, the employee stores.
Yeah.
So that's what that was for. But that we coordinate with Pixar and get approval from them and work with them and get overlay sketches if something is a little wrong or off model or something. They're really great about helping with that.
Now, I know you do the little golden books for our passengers that don't know. And actually, Jason bought some for his nephew, and he's kind of going through them, and he realized that some of the books he had bought for his nephew were the ones that you have done.
Oh, great.
I know you've done some Star Wars ones, and you've done a lot of Pixar ones. What's your favorite character to draw? You talk about you enjoy doing Pixar work so much. What would be your favorite character or favorite Pixar film that you would enjoy drawing?
It's a tough question because there's so much with them. I mean, I've done a lot of Cars with them. Cars are a blast. I mean, that first Cars film in particular resounded a lot with me. It was just, but I love all of them. I love Monsters, Nemo. But as far as drawing them, I mean, Woody and Buzz are always fun. Oh man, it's a tough call. It's all fun. I love it, and I love all their new characters. Whenever there's a new one, I love learning how to draw those. There's such a great, there you go, Wally and Eve. I love that.
I was hoping you would say Wally, because we need more Wally stuff in the parks. There seems to be not enough Wally stuff in the parks for my liking.
Oh, yeah, that's a great film. Andrew Stanton.
I think my daughter has just about every single Wally thing that they sell, which isn't a heck of a lot. There's a couple of, well, I'm not counting pins. She has a few pins, but not all the pins. Like keychains or whatever. I think she has every one that they make.
Ratatouille's great too. I love Ratatouille as well as a film. And then of course, the ride is being built. So that's going to be great. But everything with all their films, you never know where they're going to show up, and they're doing more and more in the parks and stuff. So it's just great to see that appearing. And so naturally, whenever there's a chance to work on something with Pixar, I'm on it. I love it.
So step into reading books, so you're helping him learn to read.
Oh, great. Oh, that's really good to hear. That was fun. If I may say, that was one of the ones. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted, I just want to change gears just ever so slightly. We were talking earlier about Vinylmations, and you were saying how you worked on the Vinylmations. Are you drawing a Vinylmation, or are you drawing on a Vinylmation, or are you?
That was, well, and again, that was a while back, but I had a lot. The greatest thing about Vinylmation, other than the actual work itself, it's great to work on some of these characters that you don't often get to see on merchandise, and usually secondary characters. Sometimes tertiary characters, and you would get to work on these series of little figurines. And that was always a blast for me. But basically the way we did it was you'd have a template, and you'd work in a vector-based program, art program on the computer, and I would usually sketch it out. Like I would rough it out either on paper first or on the computer, just in a sketchy form, so that I can kind of see the strategy. And I would work with someone like Thomas Scott, who's who was the head of that program. And oh, there we go. You got one? Oh yeah. I love that. Was that
the crustacean crab from Muppets?
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
I love that guy. So yeah, we would work together on figuring out the strategy for these, because they would come out in series, and you wouldn't want to have all your A characters in there. You'd want to put in some A, B, C, and have it like that, so that people had stuff to look forward to, and it was spaced out. Because if you had a whole series of all the top characters, the second series would have the lesser known characters, and you want each series to sell really well, and for something for everybody. But we would sketch them out first. Every artist worked a little differently, and when that got approved, then you go in there and you work on the template and do the front, the back, the side, and every view of this character on the vinyl piece, even the bottom, like what's on the bottom of the feet, all that kind of stuff. And that's how that would work.
Okay, yeah. So it's basically a computer program then that you're working with.
Yeah, but again, it's just
After
it's basically by hand, but you're manipulating once you get it into the computer. The colors and the precise shapes and stuff like that. You work with vectors, which are Bezier curves, and programs sort of like Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator. Those are two examples of programs, and you work in sometimes you'd still do it freehand. Like a lot of things I would just do freehand. Like for example, Merida, she's got all that hair, beautiful hair, and you could go in point by point and curve and move the little anchor points and all this stuff to make each curve perfect. Or you can go in there with more of a freehand tool in there and still draw it out by hand and then kind of fix things as you go. But yeah, every artist worked a little differently with that. But I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be a cool thing to do for sure. I'm thinking it's about time to bring the ship in. We're just about done the Kessel run. It's been a little bit more than 12 parsecs. Before we go, Caroline, do you have any questions you want to ask, or something we can do some quick one-timers?
I just want to say thank you for sharing about your dream and your passion, and it's really a thrill to hear. It's really a thrill to hear about it.
Oh, thank you very much. This has really been an honor, and I love listening to your guys' show. And I'm gonna go back in and listen to more of the past episodes because this is a great show.
Well, we thank you for being with us. Jason, is there anything you wanted to bring up?
I just want to say it's been great to meet you.
Oh, you too. Well, next time you guys are down, let me know. I'd love to hang out with you guys in person.
That would be great. I would actually love to do that. I do have one quick question. Might not be a quick one. It's from my daughter, actually. She went to art school. She was a 2-year course, and she did a 1.5 years. She was taking graphic design, actually. She ended up, it wasn't something that she was wanting to do in the end. And she's now actually doing chocolatier work and cake decorating. And she seems to be enjoying that more. But she wanted to know, is there something that you wish you knew then, which you know now?
You mean like when I was going to school?
Yeah, going to school, or when you're first starting out, or something you would advise somebody coming up what they need to do?
Basically, what I always tell everybody, and there were times when I think I took everything for granted while I was working, even when I was hired and working for Disney. The first thing I would say though is always remember that there's something else around the corner. You're going to have, it's a roller coaster. You'll have ups and downs. Prepare for anything and everything, but also be fearless, chase your dreams, your passion, but also remember, don't take anything for granted. When you have opportunities or things come up or you're meeting people or there's chances to do some great things, be sure to do it. Like, for example, there's a minor thing, but in animation we had lots of training opportunities because that's something Walt started in the 30s. He wanted his artists to constantly grow and get better. And sometimes you take it for granted. These classes were going on. For example, Walt Stanchfield was, one of Walt's artists from way back in the day, and he was still teaching into the 90s gesture drawing and life drawing. And I went to a few of his classes, but I didn't go as often as I wish I had. And now he's gone and not at the studio any longer. But we've since started doing that here where I work now, and we have life drawing, and it's kind of a small group, but we still keep it alive and do that. And I know animation still does that and different parts of the company. But it's something that I wish I had done more at the time, is that training, and don't trap yourself into one specialty too much. I was very fortunate along the line that different things came up for me. Like while I was with animation, I was also doing work for publishing and getting to work on children's books and learning that and how to compose a scene and do all that kind of thing. And then of course later with the storyboarding, etc. And I think all of that helped me later to be hired by merchandise, because they kind of want well-rounded artists who are not good at like fewer things. They want people that know different ways of doing so. So my advice to her would be to just take every opportunity, everything she can get her hands on to learn as much as she can, not only about everything specifically that she's interested in, but different ways of doing that. And I think that will help in the end, because you never know where you're going to end up and, you know, where your actual dreams and passions are going to take you. It's a wild ride.
So if you get invited on a podcast, say yes.
Exactly.
Well, Ron, I want to thank you for joining us. This was a wonderful, wonderful interview. I'd love to have you on again. I'm not sure how we're going to work it out. We need to do another episode someday, sometime. But it was great having you on. And I just want to say, Ron, any final words before we pass it off?
Oh, let me see. Let's say at the end of the Jungle Cruise, welcome back to civilization and the freeways. Except for, is that only at Disneyland? That's my home park, so I keep thinking of that one. But watch out for Schweitzer Falls.
If you see the two docks up ahead, we call them a paradox.
Yeah, there you go.
If you step off to the right, otherwise you'll get very wet. Well, thank you very much, and take it away, Ken.
If you would like to keep the adventure going after the show, be sure to like our Facebook friends page, Grand Circle Tour Magical Ticket Holders. While on Facebook, like our group page, Grand Circle Tour. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Grand Circle Tour Podcast, as well as Instagram, GCT Podcast, and our YouTube channel, Grand Circle Tour. If you would like to send us a message, you can email us at gctpodcast@gmail.com. T-shirts and other fun merchandise can be found at tpublic.com. Simply search Grand Circle Tour Podcast. If you enjoyed your adventure, leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Only one rule, make it good. Thank you for riding with us, and welcome home.